Hi everyone and welcome to Danka Praktik. If you have a wood-burning stove in your house, perhaps the most common question is, can you leave the house while the fire is still burning in the stove? Is it dangerous to leave the fire burning? Do you have to put the fire out before you leave the house? We'll answer these and other questions in this video. All of this comes from experience. So stay tuned.
Danka Praktik.
Before we start, we must say this disclaimer. Fire is not to be fooled around with, it is exactly the opposite. What you'll see in this video comes from our decades-long experience in using a wood-burning stove. Despite this, best to study the manual for your stove exactly and see what the manufacturer recommends for leaving the stove unattended. But the best advice is by far to use common sense and pay attention to what you're doing. Always be careful and mindful about what you do around a wood-burning stove. Never neglect the fact that you have a fire burning within your household. Make sure nothing is left on or around the stove. Before leaving the house, make sure that there isn't anything near or on the stove that is potentially flammable. The space around the stove should be clean. If you have to leave something, like a wood box for instance, make sure that there is enough space between it and the stove. Even more importantly, the working surface on the stove must be clear from any pots, dishes or else. Watch also that anything drying on the stove is not left behind, since it can accidentally fall on the working surface. Regulate the fire. Best not to leave a blazing fire inside the stove when you leave the house. Rather, plan a bit in advance and either stop adding wood on time or add it moderately. The kind of fire you want to leave is a weaker one, to which you can add a bigger piece of wood. The point of all this is to keep a normal fire going for a longer period of time. Regulate the stove vents. This is very important, since if you don't do it properly, the air circulation through the stove will be strong and you'll have a blazing fire that will go out very quickly. The best way to do this is to completely close the vent that opens to the chimney and put the vent under the ashtray to a minimum setting. This way the fire will have enough air to burn normally and will not extinguish. This is how we do it on our stove. It's mostly the same on other stoves too. Make sure the stove doors are closed tightly. Before leaving the stove, always check that the firebox door and ashtray door are properly closed. If they're not, the fire will burn out much faster, but even worse, there will be smoke in the room and there is always the danger that a spark from the fire will fall onto the floor. Open the room doors. To achieve a better heating effect, we recommend leaving the room doors open, especially if you're leaving for a longer period of time. This should help in heating the whole house and keeping a nice cozy temperature within the house. Otherwise, the room where the stove is would be hot, while the other rooms would be very cold. Leave some ash in the ashtray. The last tip is the easiest. If possible, leave some ash in the ashtray. About a half-full ashtray gives the best results from our experience. The reason for this is simple. The ash partially blocks the airflow through the stove. It acts like an additional vent, so to say, suppressing the fire, and this helps the fire last longer. In the end, one more very important thing. Keep the stove and chimney clean, maintained, and well assembled. The stovepipe must stand firmly, there must be no smoke leaks from the stove, and the chimney must be free of creosote deposits. Using larger pieces of seasoned wood for keeping the fire going is also very good. All of this will additionally help to leave the wood-burning stove in a carefree manner, and you won't have to think and rethink if everything is okay while you're out of the house. So that's it for this time. We hope the video helps. Please like and subscribe. It's a huge help for what we're doing. Thanks for watching and thanks for your time.